Thanks, everyone. And I'm not really sure how in an afternoon we're going to be able to compete with those pitches for attention, but we'll do our best on a topic as broad as the European innovation economy. I would like to first do some changes to the seating, because we decided, looking at the previous panels, that it was terribly Northern European for all of us to sit spread out all over the place. So, Linnar...
Isn't that also what a European innovation economy looks like?
Yes, exactly. It's a nice metaphor, right?
Let's form a true European innovation economy by forming a cluster first.
Yes, so the terrible jokes start now.
Linnar, if we're going to be really accurate about one of Europe's core strengths, I would say maybe we should create the typical cluster, which is here in Europe, which is a fragmentation cluster.
There you go. So what I'd like to do first is introduce these two gentlemen who will be known to some of you, but probably not all of you. So first, to my left, Burton Lee from the US. Yes, so Burton is very active today at Stanford University. He's a lecturer and runs the European Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program there, which has speakers from not just Estonia, but other European countries talking about entrepreneurship and innovation in Europe. Burton has probably the longest LinkedIn profile I've ever seen, and I'm connected to a lot of people. So it's most impressive, but a few things on there. So he's a keynote speaker. He's been a judge on competitions. He's involved in conferences, academic organizations. He's a member of the advisory board at Grow VC. So he's involved in the crowdfunding space. He's recently also been member of the National Innovation Task Force for the Office of the Prime Minister of Ireland, looking at innovation in Ireland. He's been an angel investor, run government programs, been a board member on startups, policy advisor, research engineer at HP and Daimler, and in my count, been involved in 7 universities. So thank you, Burton, for joining us here, having traveled all over Europe in the last 2 weeks. Linnar I looked Linnar up on Wikipedia, and someone had kindly given him the title of Estonian Internet Guru. Which is great.
It's an old entry.
It's an old entry?
Outdated.
Oh, so it's even better now, right? So he's even better than a guru. He's a co-owner involved in strategy at Mobi Solutions, a mobile app development, mobile payments company. And he's a member of the business advisory group at the Nordic Investment Bank. And probably most relevantly here, member of the governing board at the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. He's a former Skype employee, used to be the rector at the Estonian IT College and advisor to the PM here, and he's written a lot of articles and reports on the knowledge-based economy and information society. So with that introduction, what I wanted to do was ask each of you on the topic of the European innovation economy, sort of two questions. So first, do we have one? Do we have a European innovation economy? It's a rhetorical question, of course. But really, what is the good, the bad, and the ugly that you see on your view in Europe? Burton.
Well, I think you definitely have a European science economy. Innovation economy, there are pieces of. It's quite dysfunctional broadly across Europe. There are some sweet spots, some countries, some regions that are, I think, pulling their innovation sectors together far more effectively than the rest of Europe. So, yes, but a qualified yes, you do have a European innovation economy. The big strategic question is, does it perform at a sustained global level along with the United States and other major countries in Asia, for example? And again, with some exceptions, mostly in the Nordics, a couple of other countries, the core problem is that the European innovation sector, Europe in general, is not performing in the innovation sector at a global level. It's not creating new jobs at a pace consistent with what's happening in the US or other major innovation sectors outside Europe.
I agree that, and this is what we are facing on a daily basis. We see an excellent research which has networked globally. European research is tightly integrated with the rest of the research community around the world. We have plenty of excellence centers on research. We have a European higher education system in a broad sense, and we have kind of European approach to higher education as a public good and as a great accessible service. However, when it comes to the innovation economy on the entrepreneurship and business side, we clearly see locations, some regions which are performing well in particular areas, and the question would be, do we at all need a European innovation economy, or should we be happy with what we have and help those regions which have not found their path towards a higher value added and innovation, and inject more and support more those to become an international, really globally, internationally recognized innovation center in those particular areas. We have a pharmaceutical clusters, we have car industry clearly, we have food industry clearly available and existing in Europe, and clearly also bits and pieces around different other emerging areas. They are no longer leading areas in Europe, no longer leading the global innovation path and process. And the question would be how to integrate great research together with that innovation.
But effectively what you're saying is we don't need a European innovation economy. Regional and industrial clusters is fine. Is that what I'm reading?
When we look at the moment to the European really political scene, I see less and less opportunities for harmonized European innovation policy and harmonized European innovation economy as a potential consequence of those political activities. I see regions in Europe emerging around certain topics and like-minded, like-cultural innovation clusters to which we come probably also and see what is a difference in Nordic-Baltic as one potential innovation cluster and region.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I agree there are some areas where pan-European approaches don't make sense. However, in the area of intellectual property patents, this is a huge area where some progress is being made, albeit very, very slowly, towards a unified patent system for Europe. The other area, and there are several others, but another area where I think a pan-European approach really does make sense is in the area of angel and venture capital in terms of common investment regimes, cross-border investing, trying to reduce the barriers in investing across countries and making it more of a European-wide angel and venture capital market. The last area is extremely difficult, and we are many, many years away from achieving that. I think the biggest problem in the European innovation system, in my view, is the university system, the public universities. And until European countries tackle reform of public universities and fundamentally re-examine the public university models, the European innovation sector is simply not going to perform at the global level. There are some countries that have gone out and taken very deep, extended looks. I look primarily to Finland, looks at how their new modern university system should look like. Finland, during 2007-2009, went through a comprehensive reform effort resulting in new legislation passed in 2009, which took all the Finnish universities out of the public system. Almost no other European countries have gone in and reorganized their universities, put them on an entirely new legal foundation. I believe this is going to lead to a widening gap between Finland and many other European countries in innovation performance as a result.
Okay. That's a pretty strong statement, Burton. And you may have already answered this question, so I'll start with Linnar. If you had to point to one Europe-wide initiative to be supported and pushed, what would it be?
Well, I would pick up what Burton started by saying issues around patent intellectual property, and that is embedded into one European Commission's initiative, which was very ambitious in the original pace. It's a part of the digital agenda of European Union called Digital Single Market. And Digital Single Market attempts to achieve by year 2050, 15, and despite the fact that when we look at the moment to the roadmap and the progress,
He's looking like it might be 2050.
yeah, to get to the situation where we would have in place also multi-territorial licensing for the creative content and intellectual property-based services, where we would have a pan-European patent system, more elaborated European payment area, but also many other, mostly taking down the barriers of cross-border business, making really one market as a Europe. Right now, when we're looking also to the foreign direct investments, nobody is going to say that, well, where are you going to establish your company? I'm going to invest to Europe. No, it's not going to invest to Europe. You're going to take market after market after market after market and 27 different fragmented markets. By taking down a number of barriers, we can achieve more. We have basic freedoms: free movement of capital, free movement of people, free movement of services, and they just don't work in the context of 21st century.
Andris, before we go into question 2, can I add a bit more
Sure.
comment on number 1? I follow the European scene very, very closely, particularly at European Union level, and unfortunately I remain pessimistic that major progress is being made, and I'd just like to give you some dates as to what's happened over the past several months. Back in February, 12 EU leaders called for a growth strategy. This is after working through several years of debt problems. The senior political leadership of major European countries has finally realized that growth is actually what's needed. No mention of innovation, just growth. In May, on May 23rd, there was a call for a new Europe. So I point you to the Welt am Sonntag from 3rd July, in which the headline is Geheimplan für ein neues Europa, so secret plan for a new Europe. Well, guess who were the 4 institutions and people at the table representing Europe at the draw-up of these initial discussions? The European Council President, the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the Euro Group, which is responsible for the EU currency. The European Parliament was not represented at that meeting. And the 4 areas that they're recommending to take Europe out of its current crisis are in the area of money, banking, politics, and reform of the social system. Unfortunately, where is the innovation reform agenda as part of the new Europe? It's not even here at the topmost senior levels here in Europe. At Europe's moment of crisis, innovation isn't even part of the discussion. Lastly, last April, they announced a new chief science officer, which I applaud. She's very qualified. She's a scientist from Scotland. However, what she's really doing is going out and explaining and trying to convince the European public about innovation. So they've engaged a chief science officer really to be doing a chief innovation officer's job. They can't seem to find a chief innovation officer or a person to really represent innovation here across Europe. I would have suggested Richard Branson might have been a good representative. But there continues to be a fundamental confusion in Europe between science and innovation, and a continued confusion and overfocus on scientific excellence and research results rather than on fundamental dysfunctionalities in commercialization, intellectual property, venture finance, and many, many other areas. So I'm quite pessimistic about real progress being made at EU level. At a national level, however, that's a different story. And I think that's where we see some real shining stars here in Estonia, Finland, other Baltic and Nordic countries, among others.
Okay, thanks, Burton. So I think that leads to the next point I wanted to discuss. Coming down from the big EU-wide discussion and big policies and EU presidents and so forth, I come from a startup background. We created a co-working space in Riga with no government support or involvement of any kind in a few months' time, to the astonishment of the local government, of course. So I come from a, let's just get it done kind of world. So if we go right down to these national governments and look at the innovation system, there's obviously three parties involved here: governments, universities, or education in general, and startups and business. And maybe I can get a quick show of hands. So who here is from the business community? Okay. Who here is from the education university community? And is there anyone representing government? I see a couple of hands. You don't have to be so shy. We're not going to beat you up. It's okay. The question is really, if you take each of those, maybe we can start with the university sector. What can they do without doing massive policies that would affect innovation in their countries or in these regions to actually make things move? So maybe Linnar, you can.
Curriculum development is a sole property of university itself. Mm-hmm. The question on how universities are evaluated by their owners, say a government, is a different issue. And nobody's building actually any barriers for the universities to include more entrepreneurship embedded into the core curriculum and having an extracurriculum opportunities around the entrepreneurship. The same university we are here sitting right now, Tallinn Technical University, created an entrepreneurship institute not because government or Brussels ordered that, but they felt that in order to remain competitive and in order to attract more students, and also to be attractive for the future employees and business partners for the universities, it's a last moment to act and do that. Mm-hmm. This is a wise move by university. And universities are able to shift their focus. However, they require a kind of moment of truth. As long as their financing is secured by the state budget and remains pretty much as it is, and they are also having kind of market shares which are pretty stable on the national markets, they are not interested in innovation in curriculum development and in engaging entrepreneurship into the agenda. But the key word for me would be entrepreneurship and practical application of knowledge into the curriculums of universities all around Europe, all disciplines and all degree levels.
So like the DDV program in Tartu?
Good example.
The Aalto University
yes.
School, which was actually a student-led initiative, I guess, that turned into something else. So, Burton, what about the university education segment? What do you see as, is there anything else they can do on their own without waiting for grand plans?
Absolutely. I've been involved in advising European universities and have watched closely what works and what doesn't. And based on some very good examples here in Europe and Finland and UK, but also at US universities like Stanford, MIT, so a feature, an element which really doesn't get much attention but can have a big impact on a national ecosystem, innovation ecosystem, is the formation and sustainment of active student entrepreneurship clubs, societies inside the universities. If you look at the experience of Aalto Entrepreneurship Society at Aalto University in Finland, they've had a major national level impact in a very, very short time, 3 years or less, in recruiting new students, getting dramatically increasing the startup formation rate in the Helsinki area, securing facilities, resources from the university, also from TechHub, to support trips into Silicon Valley and other clusters. And ultimately, one of the outcomes has been a formal partnership with colleagues of mine at Stanford, the Stanford Technology Ventures program. The only other country where I really see well-organized student entrepreneurship clubs and societies is the UK. And unfortunately, these do not get enough attention at a national government level as formal parts of national innovation policy. The reason these are important is because, and I don't mean clubs or societies that are run by professors or by the university. I mean clubs and societies run by and for the students. that are not under the student union, that can raise their own independent financing, that can set up their independent bank accounts, that can secure direct financial sponsorship and in-kind sponsorship from industry. If you look at what the Finns have done, at Stanford we have 3 student entrepreneurship clubs in engineering, medicine, and business. They have a huge impact. This is where students really learn to take charge and develop their own ideas, where they're on their own, they're making it up as they go. And this is something that can be done initially, can be encouraged by rectors, by deans. This is an initiative that I've suggested at the highest levels of German government, that they consider doing this across all the German university system. This is something that the European Commission could be funding. And I mean serious funding, 30, 50,000 euros a year, for example, 100 universities just to start with. This has the potential to really bring major new change inside the universities. It also provides a body politic, an organized community inside the university system to push the rectors, push the deans, push the professors in the right direction. So it's not always top-down from ministries of education pushing for change, but bottoms-up students pushing inside the system as well. So in my view, this is the single most easy, cheapest initiative that could be done in most European countries and have very near-term impacts.
Great. So what about businesses who are obviously interested in the outputs from the innovation in the university in the university sector? What can they do without waiting to help the innovation economy and benefit from it?
Governments and universities are often in love with each other. They are both about stability and long-term planning.
Right.
Well, do you imagine that those startups who pitched just half an hour ago, that they know what they need as competence, as terms of capital? What do they need next month? Probably not.
They're still finding it out.
It's too far to think for next month.
Yep.
So it's very difficult for the businesses to
what about big business, which has
and that's
time to
quite
plan
unfortunate situation
further.
Because what I see is that the most unfortunately is that the big enterprises who are also interested in long-term planning and stability and not too much about innovation, but rather a kind of stability, not so much about innovation. They are not the kind of hearts of core innovation. They match well with universities. They match also well with the governments. How to engage a startup community and entrepreneurship community, small and medium-sized enterprises with universities, that's a truly big challenge. And I think the interface is not the formal kind of rectorate, the administrative high level, but the interface could really be student entrepreneurship clubs, innovation factories, and less formal interfaces to interact with universities.
But with the Microsoft App Campus concept in Finland, funding new teams, is this a good thing?
It is a good thing. Well, I have been also acting as a rector of university in Estonia, and I saw it. If you open up a 1 week slot per semester in your students' classes and say that this 1 week will be intense entrepreneurship week, all companies could come and pitch to students their ideas, and students would join their teams to work 1 week for free for those companies on those ideas. Of course, you can imagine, were those big companies who came, or were those small and startup companies? They all were small companies with kind of immediate needs. And those are the good interfaces to interconnect with the real demand on the very dynamic market, especially dynamic market of startup scenes. I don't think we need too much to worry about the interface between universities and the big companies. They have found and they are married.
Okay. What about you, Burton? What about businesses? What can they do?
Well, as Linnar was indicated, there are a number of levels. I think that if you, again, look at the Finnish example, other examples around Europe of active student entrepreneurship groups, these typically form a very good way to build interfaces between the entrepreneurship industrial community, meaning angel venture capital, legal counsel potentially, as well as existing startups. And so one of the primary goals of independent student societies is to start to attract that ecosystem of companies, private sector individuals, coaches, mentors into the university environment, actively coming in on a daily basis to see companies, to tour laboratories, that sort of thing. So this is where I think it would be good to see, and this provides a foundation for building new linkages between university and industry, which by and large doesn't really exist in many European public universities today, but again, around these independent, not-for-profit student entrepreneurship societies. On the issue of the large companies, the only major large corporations we see really engaging across Europe with student entrepreneurship groups, the entrepreneurship movement, tend to be the large American multinational ICT companies, the Googles, the Microsoft, the Ciscos, et cetera, not the European major corporations, which is great for the American companies, but I think it's really leaving many European companies without access to some of the new ideas that students are having and new products and services that they're developing. I'm also not terribly convinced that the current, in general, with some exceptions, that the current industry-university cooperation models are terribly effective in Europe. There are big problems with the public university model working with industry because of commingling of public and private monies, because you have professors who are civil servants for the most case, who don't really, whose performance and promotion incentives don't really mesh well with industry culture. I think one area where we've been working extensively at Stanford, and you see some other examples here in Europe, of how you can build new models for large company industry cooperation is by creating product design programs in engineering and medical schools. At Stanford, we teach product design embedded very deeply in mechanical engineering and in the design school, which is in the engineering school. Here in Europe, with the exception of the Nordics, Germany, Netherlands, and some parts of the United Kingdom, product design is largely absent from engineering schools as a formal curriculum. So this comes back to some of the curriculum changes and reforms that can be made. Some of the work we've been doing in Ireland with Irish universities over the past 2 years is creating new medical device product design programs, and this has provided a new platform for interacting with major medical device companies, US, Irish, German, et cetera. If you don't have the proper platforms in universities for companies, large companies to engage with, it becomes hard for them to engage. And right now, the only major platform for major companies is research. Product design is a very different paradigm for engaging with industry, which really needs to be built out, I think, here in Estonia and in other Baltic republics.
But Andris, with your business background, how much have you been dealing with universities in your career?
So I've been dealing with universities in terms of attending them mostly, and spending lots of money on them, which is great return over a long period of time. But I mean, more recently as TechHub, we've been approached by the universities in Latvia to work together. But with all due respect, there's lots of things they can do without waiting for us or the government, and so that was the real point of this. I think.
But what are your expectations?
My expectations are that the universities need to be looking forward and taking small steps rather than waiting for big programs. So I think there's, it sounds kind of cliche to learn from startups these days. They're very hot, right? Facebook used to be a startup. Everyone's talking about learning from them. But it's not cliched, because I think there are things they can do. Start programs small, build on small steps to make big programs rather than wait for the big grand plan, and only then execute and have,
But it's so strange to think because university is an environment of continuous startup. Every lecture...
It should be a place of experimentation,
every
right?
lecture, every minute you are starting, igniting something up.
Yep.
In your classroom, in your seminars, in your practices, it's a total startup environment. And then suddenly you lose the interface with a market.
Yeah.
What happened?
It's very strange.
What do you feel?
It's very strange. I find it difficult to deal with. I'm a business person, so every time I talk to university or government, for me it's slow, right? Because I don't have the patience for that. So I mean, I believe there's a great potential, obviously, in the Baltics and Nordics, and I wanted to move to the question of what's holding us back. Maybe even focusing mostly on the Baltics. What do you think is holding these countries back from more innovation and more success from that innovation? Burton.
One thing is you don't talk to each other enough. You don't visit each other. I asked when I was here in Estonia last year, to what extent Estonian professors actually go to Finland, spend time in Finnish universities, talking, building relationships with Finnish companies. It may have improved a little bit since then, but the answer was a year ago, not much. And I also don't see these meaningful exchanges, communications on a sustained high-level basis between universities in the Baltic region, with a few exceptions, maybe between top Finnish, Swedish universities. So I think part of the barriers are simply the lack of information and the lack of active engagement and interchange. Where I see some real positive trends here are what's come out of Finland, so Garage 48, Startup Sauna, where again it's really been the students who've been pushing this movement really on an unofficial basis across the Baltic region. That's fantastic, but we need to start seeing that same type of movement, rector to rector, dean to dean, professor to professor, on an ongoing basis, and talking with companies in the region as well.
Okay, and before Preet corrects me, Garage 48 is an Estonian-based event. So, but they're expanding to Africa as well, right? Which is a great example of
fantastic,
of
very innovative.
Yeah,
yeah.
So Linnar, what do you think is if you had to name one, what's the key thing that's holding us back?
When I'm looking to the political scene in Northern European and Baltic states, and we might include also Poland to a certain degree to the Baltic Sea region, I have seen for the last 10 years a certain kind of loyalty towards European Commission and hope for broader European picture. I see also that the same hope to build a joint Europe is slowly getting less backed up by the practical facts and success stories. And I have seen more and more meetings among Northern European prime ministers. 3 Baltic prime ministers meet and visit each other regularly. Nordic-Baltic prime ministers' regular meetings are taking place now. We are harmonizing our positions also in European Union. So I see that there is an increasing political collaboration following up the fact that we are economically totally interconnected. Our financial sector, our telecommunications sector, our retail food industry, they are totally integrated into one single region of Europe. And that's one of the most highest integration levels we can see. Yes, it has not been followed up by the public sector, e-governance, public services, including universities, and those are the areas which need to be followed up. In 2 weeks' time, we are going to have yet another Baltic Development Forum, which was Uffe Ellemann Jensen's once Danish foreign minister leitmotif that we need not only Nordic countries, Scandinavian collaboration, but we need to broaden it and bring into all the Baltic Sea countries, because that will be the key of the success and competitiveness also for the Nordic countries.
But is it going to have an impact on innovation?
And the agenda is now shifting, I think, towards innovation. First of all, because, and the most important reason is that Northern European countries, or the Scandinavian countries, the traditional good Scandinavian countries, they have been the top performance not only in European scene but worldwide scene in terms of the innovation policies and practices and competitiveness of the economies. It is having a kind of hollow type of impact to the policy making and practices of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, and also to a certain degree sometimes on some areas to Poland. But it has, first of all, it has a halo, and once again I would like to emphasize the fact that innovation is about culture, not about structures, not about necessarily the laws or law enforcement, but about the culture. If we share the same culture, then it's going to happen also. So, bottom line, I see that the broader European picture is going to be replaced right now on our own government's agenda with a strong regional collaboration. We have a Baltic Sea collaboration also as a one only regional collaboration in European Union policy, accepted collaboration. European Union supports the fact that countries have a regional collaboration, and this, in my mind, is also the key. I don't see that digital single market will be implemented in 27 countries by year 2015, but I can imagine that in Nordic Baltic area, we could have by year 2015 first multi-territorial intellectual property licensing regime, we could have a joint IP regime, we could have many other joint initiatives taking barriers down and making a Northern Baltic single market.
But is that actually really being worked on now?
Yes.
It is, good. That's news to me. That's great.
So looking across Europe, I'm extremely positive about the Baltic Nordic region. This is the region that I see moving most quickly, where I keep coming back every 3-4 months and I see new changes, progress being made in more than one country, where I see increasing numbers of young people, young entrepreneurs, where I see consistently very good quality companies, also where I see, this is one of the few places you can find smart capital in Europe, where the VCs, and now beginning more and more some angels, really are getting enough experience with deal flow. So this has a lot of ingredients. The universities, Finland, Sweden are really doing quite well, and in some cases undergoing reorganization. So overall Europe, I think the key elements, are here to continue moving forward. I think you can accelerate that through some of the measures that Linnar has mentioned, and taking more of an autonomous regional level to some of these broad IP issues, other issues, venture finance, common market. Something else that I think would benefit the region is in terms of reducing isolation to the global innovation system, is building on the Estonian, on the Norwegian, Danish, and Finnish examples, build out ties to Silicon Valley. Poland is extremely isolated from Silicon Valley, especially the Northern Baltic region. Latvia doesn't really have any formal representation. Lithuania, Estonia is very strong there. Finland, Sweden not so strong. Norwegians have just established an innovation house in downtown Palo Alto last fall. The Danes, extremely strong. Silicon Valley, if you look at the experience of the Finns, Estonians, bringing companies, students, large numbers on a sustained basis has had a major impact and ability to accelerate changes in how people think. These countries are viewed very positively in terms of, hey, Estonian startup, Finnish startup. These are good recommendations, brands, reputations to have in Silicon Valley. I think if you build upon that track record, there is a lot more that can be done here in the Baltic region, because you have very strong foundation in technical universities, and this really is an area where lowering barriers and building connections globally to Silicon Valley, Shanghai, other major tech clusters could really accelerate job creation, innovation region-wide.
That's great, thanks. So I wanted to open the floor for questions from the audience. Who has some questions or rhetorical questions, comments that we might discuss. Anyone going to volunteer to be first before I pick someone? There we are. First question. Down the front, if you could, please. Thanks. No, further down.
Hi, Andrew Scott. How much do you think culture has an impact in the entrepreneurial side of the startup community in Europe? Because if you look at the US, obviously the entire country is built on the American dream, which is essentially to make money, right? So you're born into this idea that it's good to go out there and make your mark, and bigger is better. Whereas in many countries here, it's not very fashionable.
Who wants to take that?
In case it was addressed to me, well, I have been trying to look also a number of kind of broader sociological trends, and one thing which is very well, it was convincing me, not surprising me. TNS has made a global digital lifestyle analysis, including also the breakdown of the age groups. The bottom line, next generation across borders shares more values than they share with their own national older generations. We have a next generation in different countries, in European countries, that have a similar values and also similar approach, for instance, towards entrepreneurship, innovation, openness, sharing the innovation ideas, and that's a key issue. No longer is culture influenced by what your mother said or what your grandmother said or what is a kind of good habit in my homeland. It's a next generation influenced innovation culture or cultural space, value space, and that impacts also innovation and entrepreneurship. I believe that the young next generation, if well motivated, could become a key driver for the startup arena, also in Europe.
Culture's key. Yeah, I've just spent the last 10 days in Moscow, Lisbon, and now Tallinn, and Silicon Valley, of course. And I was really struck by, my first time in Moscow. I'm thinking, these are really great entrepreneurs, great ideas. They're not that different from the ones we have in the Valley or the Finnish or Estonian. So, yeah, I think there really is a new global entrepreneurial culture that's emerging, separate from the old traditional national or ethnic or linguistic-based cultures. But it's important to understand exactly what the elements of those cultures are, because cultures are, it's values plus behaviors, okay, in terms of what people do or do differently. And what I think is the key elements of this new entrepreneurial culture are openness, sharing of information, high trust, collaboration, quick to collaboration, extensive use of IT information, so meaning social media, other IT tools, and kind of a little bit different, but in there is also acceptance of risk and failure, which I think is...
Speed also. Speed is something which I have seen, kind of the idea to market or whatever. Speed is different.
Speed is huge, and the unwillingness to accept from, the argument from society or one's parents or one's university that you have to wait 10 years before you can do anything significant with your life. No one accepts that anymore. That's a line being sold by the man, okay? And so it's all these new IT tools, the availability of venture capital finance, it's really enabling, empowering thousands and millions of young people to come up, develop their own ideas, and realize them and have a big social impact around the world.
Yeah, but I think young people is really the key. So at TechHub we see that too. There's the guys that are going places. They're all in their 20s largely. I feel very old there.
I have also one very personal experience. I have been lecturing in one Finnish and one Swedish university as Erasmus Mundus professor now for 12 years. Same course, same time a year, every year, same university, and the audience is different now than it was 12 years ago. And well, the big thing starts with the fact that, well, Finns speak English. My God, they speak good English.
Yeah, yes.
Congratulations. I don't know what they eat now at home, but they speak good English. They come to you and speak. They are interacting. It was very usual that American or Portuguese students in the international class, they were the ones who were doing the talking jobs, and Finns were just like sitting like that. They are totally different people, and they are, well, they don't look homogeneous. They are very, very heterogeneous in terms of the audience, how they look like. But I feel them as a homogeneous group in terms of really the values. That's my personal experience, which was backed up then by TNS Global Digital Lifestyle Value Survey, which covered over 130 countries.
So this is more than a subculture in each country?
It is a dominant culture, I would say, no longer a subculture.
Okay.
This issue of English is extremely important. I also work in Latin America. Right now I'm doing a major project in Colombia where the English language skills are dramatically far below those here in Estonia and most Nordic countries. And that seemingly small fact really has major impact in cutting entire communities off from what's happening globally, the ability to connect with other people using social media tools. So English language skills are a key part of this new global culture, where many regions still have major challenges. I think also in many parts of Eastern Europe, this continues to be a challenge as well. Would like to respond to the young versus something else argument. In Silicon Valley, a significant number, I don't know what the numbers are, but there have been studies done on this. When you become a serial entrepreneur and when you have lifelong learning, serious lifelong learning opportunities in the United States, entrepreneurship is not something just for people 25 or younger. And as more and more people are in the U.S. and Europe are losing jobs and established companies, I think you're going to see a much stronger wave of older generation people coming to entrepreneurship as well. And I hope that younger people and older people can work together in teams, so it's not just older teams versus younger teams. The mix of experience is extremely valuable to successive companies across the board.
Okay.
Let's have another question.
Yeah, some more questions.
Yeah. What's your opinion when it comes to the university's own supportive system to entrepreneurs, innovators? I'm thinking about financial support for patenting, tech transfer organizations, whether they can handle the IP, whether they can support the young people that you're talking about in, say, across Europe. There's a lot of differences.
So is the question, can they do that today enough?
No, your reflection upon that. Do you think that the systems are adequate, or do we have to improve?
Well, I just came from Portugal, where the current tech transfer system of independent offices is not working at all. They're developing a new paradigm of creating a centralized tech transfer office across all the public universities in Portugal, because they see that as the only way to fix problems in competency levels across the schools, different application procedures. We considered this also in Ireland, where the universities simply could not figure out how to collaborate or get this right, from university to university. Broadly speaking, this continues to be a huge problem in Europe, also the U.S. So don't think that the top U.S. research universities like Stanford, Princeton, et cetera, the top 15 are indicative of the tech transfer performance of most U.S. universities, which actually their performance indicators are much closer to those of average European universities as well. I've been inside a number of incubators, tech transfer offices at European universities. The ones I've seen, the staff really don't have the experience to really understand what the entrepreneurs need. They don't really have the networks to attract mentors, coaches. That's a key missing element around many university incubators. The incubators are not properly marketed. They're often conceived and run more as real estate office rental ventures than real startup incubators where the staff really care and follow each company's progress and help bring resources to move company from stage to stage. That's largely missing today in most incubators, public incubators and universities I've seen.
Can you, can you convert your impression to numbers? That is, how much business is lost because of that?
I wouldn't attempt to convert that number at this point, but you mean how many companies, how many startups are not being captured by university incubators? Hard to say. I mean, there are many companies formed at universities, including Stanford, which are not based on official IP. It's a group of students come together with a mobile app idea, for example, that simply are not even captured by the official system at universities. So very difficult to say.
Let's have another question from the first row here. Yeah. No, wait for the mic. Mic is there. Please take it, yes.
So my name is Maja Brisvall. I'm from Shift, which is an accelerator for the Baltics and the Nordics. And I appreciate and share very much your points of view here. But I think the entrepreneurs of today in our region have traveled already to San Francisco back and forth a number of times. I think they're all very connected into the networks, into the international conferences. And I think that's already happening, even if I share your sort of lack of enthusiasm for our politicians in Europe, and I would argue in our region as well, which don't gain many voters of advocating for an innovation policy. So that might be a result of that system in itself. But what I find, though, is what are we going to succeed on in our region? I mean, it's great that we can do new services and look for new applications towards US investors, but we have Africa and India in growing markets. And I think this is our challenge. How do we design smart, sustainable services that we can export towards these markets that are growing incrementally? And that I see sort of, and wonder what your point of view is, because where is the opportunity? And I think we have to look in other directions on the planet, rather than just between our region and the West Coast.
Thoughts on other regions?
The least I would like to have is to have developing countries following our kind of misleading path towards a unsustainable future. Bottom line, we have a huge societal, ecological, environmental challenges which could be solved by innovation, where also innovation could be adopted. So that is kind of European own problem, our own dirt we need to deal with. And that needs to be done not by American businesses, but hopefully by European businesses. What comes to the emerging markets and our role in emerging markets, yes, there is a huge opportunity. However, again, I don't want to be so selfish and see it immediately as my business case in Africa, but rather how to encourage and make them to be innovative. We win more if African countries, Africa as a region, becomes more innovative and will have at least the tiny shift from the kind of old path, old model of business to the bit and bit value added. I would like to see the growth also taking place there. Growth not originated by the sales of European companies, but growth originated by the value added of the local companies. That's the key also for our own success.
You know, if this region can continue to create sticky companies, Skype, Rovio, that attract outside investment, that are strong enough to stand on their own legs, that don't have to move to the valley, that's how you build, sustainable service-based ecosystem here. That's also how you begin to attract entrepreneurs and everyone else. So those are the key lessons of I think a key element that continues to be missing here broadly across Europe, but also this region, is the absence of a healthy legal and cultural foundation for stock options, which allow employees, significant numbers of employees, to build wealth so that we will see dozens, maybe hundreds of Rovio millionaires in the same way that we saw Skype millionaires. But we just don't see, we never saw SAP millionaires, we never saw Nokia millionaires. If you look at Google, Microsoft, Facebook, hundreds, thousands of millionaires there. Until you actually get that piece is missing across Europe. That's key to building a sustained angel investor base and serial entrepreneur base. That's a question of tax law. It's a question of ownership practices by VCs and angels. It's a question of company culture and getting sufficient trust among employees that they're willing to accept stock options as part of their compensation package along with salary. So that's a missing piece of the innovation ecosystem here, which would go a long ways to your point.
Yeah, and if I can just comment, Maya, from what I see in Latvia, there's a lot of talk about the valley, of course, but there are some companies that have quite successfully tackled the emerging markets. There's Softechnica, which is a producer of wireless equipment whose primary markets are in Africa and other regions. Basically, they're picking off the areas where the large mobile operator equipment providers are not so strong. There's another provider of public wireless equipment that's doing very well in those regions. So I think there are some examples, but in some sense you're right that that's not the natural target for people, and there is sometimes this starry-eyed wonder about only competing to try and get the US market, which is not the only market. So it's another question from Andrew.
It's just half a comment, actually, to follow up on your point about options. In that, as an entrepreneur, one of my struggles has been that a lot of employees don't value the options you give them. And so there doesn't seem to be an aspiration of, this 1% or even this 3% really can turn into a life-changing amount of money. And I think that's an educational thing, but it's also a chicken and egg because, as you say, because there haven't been that many examples of decent stock options where you do have those SAP entrepreneurs, there isn't also the M&A culture with corporates in Europe that there is in the US, so that there aren't actually many exit routes, or as many exit routes as there are, for startups to be bought up, and to continue that cycle so that you get the investors.
But so do you think this is changing with Facebook now? Because I get the sense that this is the first time I've seen an exit of the proportion where a lot of people on the street are aware of the fact that a company's IPO'd.
Amongst people who are already entrepreneurial, yes, but amongst the average developer that you hire in London, for example, I'm not so sure. I just don't think they have a sort of clear grasp of how, 0.5% when they join as the sixth person in a team, how that's really going to turn into, €1 million in their bank. It doesn't seem to compute. But that goes back, that ties into the finance problem. My actual question I wanted to ask was, what do we do about the lack of middle-tier VC financing? Because we have private equity at the top, and we have now, I think, arguably a very healthy seed environment for seed money. But in that middle tier, I have VCs saying to me that they can put in perhaps 2 or 3 million, but where's that Series B going to come from before you have, the private equity who want to stick in 40 or 50 million? And that's a big problem as well.
Yeah, you're back to the US again, right? Which doesn't really solve Europe's problem that much. On the pre-seed stage, there's the potential, the hope, the vision for equity crowdfunding stepping in, but we're still in early days, and right now there's no real legal regime in Europe that allows that as a serious option in terms of equity purchasing. The stock options issue has to be fixed. Again, it's multifaceted, so there's no near-term fix. Don't have a answer for you on the Series B problem. Not obvious.
Linnar, do you have an answer for the Series B problem? No? Yeah, I mean, I heard that Sequoia invested for the first time in the UK just recently, and so in some sense, it's what Burton's saying. The answer was in the US. I think. it's strange that you say that, Andrew, but that might be the case. And in some sense, it's sort of the naming and shaming thing, right? Once you get the US investors coming in to invest in the UK, and the UK investors going, damn,
Well,
why didn't I invest in that one?
This is an opportunity for Estonia, actually. So Estonia could enact a tax legislation which would not penalize stock options. This could potentially attract companies here to Estonia. This could create major new wealth, participation in new capital wealth creation by Estonian employees. So that's something that's actually a policy initiative that perhaps the Estonian government should be looking at, UK, et cetera, et cetera. That's a major change. It has wide-ranging tax implications, so it's not an easy thing to do, and also gets into issues of, visions of how wealth should be shared. Not an easy fix again.
This was the last question. I'm just telling that. Anyway, I wanted to comment on Andrew that, firstly, luckily Estonia isn't that example, because we have Playtech and Skype in Tartu and Tallinn with a very good example. People walking on the streets know about rich people who were just common developers. I even myself enjoyed a bit of the Playtech options. Anyway, and the moving back part, it's only 2-year cycle. You move to USA, you realize it sucks there, and you come back. Done.
Could I just add one point? Something that some European countries have been looking at, this was raised in Portugal a couple days ago, was, we'll fix the Series B problem by inviting in American VCs, by dangling large amounts of capital in front of them. The Irish have also tried to do that. That hasn't been terribly successful. Many American VCs simply just doesn't make sense for them to do that, to set up an office with one person. That you get into issues of deal flow, how you manage the investment process when your partners are split across the Atlantic. So one fix that's been tried without a lot of a major success. That's a hard one. We're still working on that.
Anyway, big applause for the panel. Thank you, Andris. Thank you, Burton. Thank you, Linnar. This was a very interesting discussion on a very boring topic, I would say. So big applause once more.
Thank you.